phases of
and also thank the administration for giving us options. And when they say this is not the final, this isn't set in stone, they mean it. That might be different than the way things were in the past, and it's a good thing. This is probably, I would say, none of these options are going to be the option yet, and that's okay. And I really appreciate the collaborative effort throughout the whole process.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We met this evening in executive session for a personnel issue. 2.1, looking for a motion to request to approve the minutes of the January 6, 2020 school board meeting as attached.
So moved.
Mr. Martin, second.
Second case.
Mr. Case, roll call, please. Oh, sorry, voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Martin, we're looking for a motion to approve the treasurer's report, a report from the treasurer's report, investment report, general fund, and capital projects fund from Mr. Martin.
All right, you kind of took my theory there, but Mr. President, I submit for approval tonight the Treasury Report, the Investment Report, General Fund, and Capital Projects reports.
Thank you. Any discussion? Second? Is there a second?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Thank you. Payment of bills, Mr. Martin?
Yes, Mr. President, I submit for approval tonight the General Fund, $6,613,000, $348.27. The Capital Reserve, $32,822.03. 2019A Construction, $151,352.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Schneider? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Financial reports?
Mr. President, I submit for approval all for December, the cafeteria, child care, activity accounts, Southern Middle School, Wilson West Middle School, and the senior high.
Thank you. Is there a second?
McCray, yes.
Mr. McCray? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Fadley?
Thank you, President Hart. It's my privilege this evening to present the superintendent's report, personnel and program recommendations. Listed on the agenda for approval this evening are 4 retirements. I want to publicly acknowledge those individuals for their service to the Wilson School District. Lori Matern, reading specialist at Whitfield, retirement effective May 22nd of this year, with 24 years of service to the school district. Kathy McConnell, math teacher at Southern, effective the end of June, with 31.5 years of service to Wilson. Doretta Schaefer, physical education teacher at West, with 35 years of service to Wilson. And Ann Stufflet, physical education teacher at Cornwall Terrace, with 18 years of service to Wilson, effective at the end of this school year. I wish all of our retirees well in the next phase of their journey in life and thank them tremendously for their service to the students of the Wilson School District.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve the superintendent's report. Mrs. Cocker. Dr. Kennedy, second. Roll call, please.
Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Schneider? Mr. Case? Mrs. Casper? Dr. Kennedy? Mr. Hart? 9-4, 0 against.
Thank you. 7.1, request to accept with gratitude a donation from Mr. and Mrs. Carl Regal, a Microsoft Surface Pro tablet, Microsoft Surface Pro tablet, pen, and charger to be used in the autistic support classroom at West Middle School. Looking for a motion? Mr. Case, second. Mrs. Casper, any discussion? Roll call, please. I'm sorry, that's a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. President,
Yes.
the next one, can you pull out 8.3 as a separate item?
Yes, we can. Mrs. Carroll, you okay with that?
Yes.
Are you ready, I should ask? 8.1, request approval of a contract between Wilson School District and TSA Consulting Group as a third-party administrator for a 457 plan, or 57B plan. 8.2, request approval of the Keystone Stars grant bonuses as shown. 8.4, request approval of the retired teacher substitute rate of $170 per day. 8.5, request approval of the revised job descriptions for support staff within the Department of Student Supports and Services, Administrative Assistant to the Director of Student Supports and Services, range 4, Student Services Specialist, range 5, and Child Accounting Specialist, also range 5. Looking for a motion to approve 8.1 to 8.2, 8.4 through 8.5. Second?
Second, Martin.
Mr. Martin? Any discussion?
I just want to say, I think it's phenomenal that retired teachers can come back and be able to substitute teacher, have that role at Wilson. I think there's a lot of great teachers that are looking to, add to the fabric of Wilson and continue to do that. I can't wait to see some smile faces back.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper? Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? That's 9-4, 0 against.
8.3, looking for an approval to authorize entering into a resignation and release agreement with Paul Cavell. Looking for first? Mr. Schneider first. Second, Mr. Negrini. Just got new title. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
No.
And Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 1 against.
I apologize. I forgot about 8.7. Move on to that. 8.7, request approval for an hourly rate adjustment for support staff as listed. Looking for a motion. Dr. Negrini? I did that again. My goodness. Mr. Negrini. Mr. Case, second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
And Mr. Hart.
Yes.
That's 9-4, 0 against.
9.1, looking for a motion to approve the updated 1920 school calendar with February 14th will now not be used as a snow makeup day, and February 17th will be a holiday for students and staff. 9.2, request permission to approve the adoption of an agreement with CHOP, Children's Home Hospital of Philadelphia, for a student receiving treatment, and instructional services are at a rate of $57.99 per hour for up to 1 hour of instruction per day, maximum of 5 hours a week. 9.3, looking for a motion to, requesting permission to approve the adoption of a tuition contract agreement with CHOR, Children's Home of Reading, Center Avenue Academy for the 19-20 school year. 9.4, looking for a motion to approve the 2020-2021 school year calendar. 9.5, looking for a motion. Mrs. Cocker? Mr. McCray, roll call, please. Oh, any discussion? Sorry. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Under Technology and Media, 10.1, request permission to purchase replacement server backup system from Dell EMC for a total cost of $49,069. The cost includes 5 years of support and maintenance. Looking for a motion? Mr. Schneider, second. Mrs. Casper, any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 9-4, against.
Under Finance, 11.1, request approval of the budget transfers dated December 11, 2019 through January 9, 2020. 11.2, request approval to turn over all unpaid 2019 school real estate tax bills to the Berks County Tax Claim Bureau. Looking for a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Martin first. Mr. Schneider second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Under Curriculum Staff Development, 12.1, request approval of the secondary program for, of the secondary program of of studies for 2020-21. Dr. Kennedy, second. Mrs. Cocker, any discussion?
I'm jealous I didn't go to high school now. This is a lot more.
A lot more options.
If you haven't seen it, though, very seriously, check out some of the amazing classes that we offer for our schools.
Thank you. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Under Transportation, 13.1, looking for request permission to purchase replacement digital two-way radios to replace the analog radios that are being phased out from RMI at a cost of $42,017.50 upfront, but we will receive a rebate check from Kenwood for approximately $5,340. This equipment will be purchased using the General Obligation Note Series A of 2019. Looking for a motion? Mrs. Cocker, second.
Second case.
Mr. Case, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Looking to request the board repeal of policies 410, 411, and 511. Those will be covered under the 311 reduction in staff. Number 420, covered under 320 freedom of speech in non-school settings. 421, covered under 321 political activities. Policy number 422, covered under policy number 322 gifts. Number 431, 531 will be covered under 331 for job and related expenses. 434 will be covered under 334, which is for sick leave. 435, 535, 335.1, 435.1, and 535.1 will be covered under 335 for family and medical leaves. 436 and 536 will be covered under 336 for personal necessity leave. Number 447 and 547 will be covered under Workers' Compensation Transitional Return to Work Program. And number 451 and 551 will be covered under newly named 351 Drugs and Substance Abuse. And finally, 451.1 and 351.1 will be covered under 551.1 will be covered under 351 for pre-employment drug testing. Looking for a motion? Mr. Schneider, second Mrs. Cocker. Any discussion?
I just want to say that was tough to listen to. Try an hour every week for months. No, I'm just kidding. That is
No, you
the
weren't.
result of a lot of hard work from the ad hoc policy committee, and I think that we are near the end or at the end.
We're getting close.
Very
But
close.
then it starts all
So-
over again. Then it starts all over again.
No,
You realize
that's not funny.
It's a never-ending battle.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McRae?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Committee reports, Berks Career and Technology Center Representative, Mrs. Casper.
No report at this time. I'll be officially going to my next meeting, my first meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, the 21st.
Great, thank you. And just to reiterate,
27.
there was a conflict before, which is why we rescheduled for tonight's meeting, and we will be going to BCTC hopefully in April, but we're still trying to work out the details. So stay tuned. Curriculum Committee, Dr. Kennedy.
The curriculum committee is meeting next Wednesday, the 29th, at 4 o'clock in the room in the corner upstairs.
619.
619, room 619. May I do BCIU as well?
You may, please.
There was a BCIU meeting last Thursday. It was 2.5 hours, just putting that out there. Quite a long meeting. The first part of the meeting was a celebration of board member, school board, and BCIU board member month. I guess that's a thing. The second part of the meeting was really long, and the best news coming out of the meeting was that there will be a dollar change, a 0% increase in the BCIU budget again, and I believe this is the second or third year in a row that there's been no increase for our budget. The budgets will be mailed. They should have been mailed yesterday, and we have to vote on that budget in April. The other thing of note that we talked about is that Representative Sonny introduced HB 1897 to eliminate cyber charter schools where there's a choice at, like we have at Wilson, we have our own cyber school here at Wilson. So that would be eliminated throughout the Commonwealth, which is a really, really good thing because they're very expensive and very ineffective. The last thing was our BCIU board president was a member of the BCIU board for 19 years, if you can imagine, and 24 years in his home district, and he retired. So there was a big retirement celebration for him as well. So it was a long but interesting meeting at the BCIU. That's it.
Thank you. Berks EIT, Mr. Schlossman.
No report.
Extracurricular, Mrs. Cocker.
Yes. So I will start with the sports updates. Boys basketball record is 14-1. Girls basketball 8-5. Boys bowling 19-2. Girls bowling 21-0. So great. Rifle 1-7. Boys swimming 7-1, and girls swimming 8-0. So I will just. Is there something on yours for swimming, since you're listening? Okay, all right. And they also won the Wilson Relays on January 11th. So girls swimming is doing exceptionally well, and I believe that's why we have the substitutes tonight, right? Okay. And also, in case people weren't aware, maybe you don't have a second grader or didn't have a second grader the last 2 years, there is a program that we offer. Second graders take swimming, have swimming lessons once a week, and they take them, bus them, depending on what school they're in, or walk up to the natatorium, and they have swimming lessons once a week for, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And it's been very successful, and I personally have a second grader this year, so we will see how that goes in the spring. Biggest concern right now is what she's going to do with her hair. So, but the program has been very helpful for students that have not had opportunities to be exposed to, swimming, and the main focus is water safety. So it's something that is very needed, and I just wanted to point that out. That's something we also offer to the lower grades in our schools.
So you know, my daughter had her first day of swimming today in second grade at Green Valley, and she really had a great time. And my older daughter, who's in 5th grade at Green Valley, was very jealous. Nice conversation after school.
Thank you. Facilities, Mr. Negrini?
Thank you. Over the Christmas break, there was a thorough cleaning and repainting of the Southern Gym. They're in the process right now of renovating the weight room over at Southern. Demolition and painting have been completed. Flooring and equipment are scheduled for next week. The last truck ordered for this particular year, a new dump truck, is going to be delivered this week, which will put our fleet up to date as required and approved in our budget previously. And finally, upon the review and satisfaction of our solicitor, the Facilities Committee is recommending that Wallover Architects complete and conduct a 10-year aquatics facility rehabilitation analysis. I can't believe that the pool is 10 years old at this point based upon what has taken place over the last couple of years. One of the main issues that continues to come up, as Teresa Bradburn can certainly attest to that, is air quality in the natatorium, not only just from a temperature standpoint, but for safety concern of our swimmers. We've continued to have piecemeal work, I suppose, on the natatorium, and if it takes a complete overhaul this summer and a further shutdown, that would be the recommendation of the Facilities Committee. So Wallover Architects have been doing this for a long time now, specializing in natatoriums. So certainly we hope to have this on the agenda for the next meeting for further discussion. But again, considering the limited amount of time that the natatorium is shut down throughout the school year, as it is utilized virtually 365 days a year, we need to make sure that this next rehabilitation project is done thoroughly and properly, and so I don't have to wear sunglasses every time I show up at the pool regarding how warm it is, or the quality of air is not great. So that's my report. Our next meeting is February 10th. 4:30.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Martin?
Our next meeting is February 3rd, but we did meet last week with RBC, who are bond counselors, and we had general information provided to us. There was no decisions made. It was just general information gathering for future potential repercussions on the feasibility study.
Thank you. Human Resources, no report, but our meeting will be next Wednesday in Dr. Fately's office. Legislative, Mr. Martin?
A few things. Just our legislators only have 5 days for the next 60 days. They really aren't going to be addressing much, but come March, you'll be seeing a lot of flurry of activity, and then that will continue through June, where they have June is the busiest month for the legislators' office for budget purposes reasons. But I did read a couple of interesting articles, and maybe some of you folks have read that, about PSERS and how they do their investments. And it was a little critical of some of the investments they've been making, but one of the key items was that under PSERS guidelines, they can invest in almost anything they choose to do so, because they have their own rule-making authority to investment, unlike schools where you have to have certain criteria to meet to make investments. But I pulled this off one of the websites, and one of the concerns was they made a $300 million investment in a company that it's registered in the Cayman Islands, and it's with a Hong Kong firm, that was started, and they were under criminal investigation in Pennsylvania. But they invested $300 million in startup companies in India because of this. Returns would be between 15 and 20%, and that's fine if you get that. But I think at the risk, I would not. If it was my money, I would not be putting my retirement funds into risky items of such. Of course, it's only $300 million is only not much considering they have over $50-some billion in investments, but it's still a thought that schools are restricted for what they can put their investments into, but the fund can go open and put in almost anything. I could open a business, they could, not that they would, but they could invest in my business. So I think that, and this is more of an editorial, the whole system needs to be reviewed. I think the state needs to address that issue because even though there is one CPA on the firm, Frank Ryan legislator is the only one, I think the way that they do their rulemaking and governance is coming in some questions. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. Something I'm excited about, because it's kind of something I've been harboring on, is about prayers in schools. It's my understanding that the secretary is going to be coming out with some announcements soon on the rules and regulations to make it clear what things can be done and not be done. And it was supposed to be out, I think, either today or tomorrow, but I think their guidance needs to be given to the school districts so it's uniform throughout, all the states. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
I'm filling in for Mrs. Troutman, but I will, if it's okay with you, Mr. Hart, I'll wait till after Talia gives her report.
Okay.
I think she'll probably knock some off.
All right, thank you. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
Yes, thank you. The Ed Foundation has been busy lately, so I'll just give a quick update. The WEF has submitted their Earned Income Tax Credit for 2020 renewal that was submitted in November, and they were notified of their approval last week, which was $52,000, which is great. And they have received 80% of the funds, has been fully paid to Wilson School District, so that's $41,600. So just if anyone in the audience or at home, the hundreds of viewers watching online, it's a lot less than that, but if you should be out there tonight, please consider the Earned Income Tax Credit and consider the Ed Foundation for donations. If you have a business, you get pretty much up to about 90%, somewhere around that neighborhood, of a tax credit when you register and donate to the Ed Foundation for EITC. The spring, and you wonder what the WEF does with all that money. They've been doing some great things, and they've been very busy. The Spring 2020 venture grant applications were submitted by the January 8th, 2020 deadline. 20 applications were received, and the allocations committee met on January 15th for discussion and feedback, and all 20 venture grants were approved. So the approved grant recipients will be notified on January 27th. So what do they call that with movies? Spoiler alert? But we didn't talk about how much, so that's step 2 of it. So the funds are going to be allocated, so watch out for January 27th, spoiler alert. So I'm off script. It's what happens when I'm off script. So fall 2019, there were, so for this year, there were a lot of grants already allocated for this year, and just to note, the employee giving campaign, which included 120 employees of Wilson, gave $4,905, and the Wilson Ed Foundation matched those funds for an additional $4,905. So it's a total of $9,810. There also, for fall 2019, 3 grants were awarded $1,162 each in funds. So the Ed Foundation's busy. They're giving money to great projects that are I wouldn't consider pet projects, but just projects that Wilson teachers and administration and faculty feel are best for our district, above and beyond taxpayer base. So good organization. Some news about the Iron Chef update. Mark your calendars again for the Wilson Iron Chef 2020. It's Sunday, March 22nd from 1 to 4 p.m. And there's first taste tickets are available at 12 p.m. where you get an early taste. You get let in early and you get to taste all sorts of things. Checked out the website this morning on the Wilson website, and there's a great video that if you are questioning how awesome or not awesome the Iron Chef is, check out the video online. It is phenomenal. I was there last year and helped out. I look forward to this year being there. And they showed the parade of the vendor lane and all the cooks doing it. Some changes for this year for the Iron Chef Bash. Instead of business folks coming in with restaurants and such doing the competition, there's going to be a mix of students from BCTC. There's going to be someone from East, there's going to be someone from West, and there's going to be someone from the Muhlenberg Reading Technology Center. So they're going to be paired with leaders or chefs from the community as well, and there'll be at least one Wilson representative as a chef there. So it's a little bit of a change up, but it's kind of bringing in the BCTC, so which is pretty exciting. So anyway, and that'll be right on the gymnasium floor during the event, so another bit of a change. So come on out and see that, and get your tickets, check it all out. Tickets are online right now for sale, and I believe the first taste tickets are $25, and the other tickets are, for student tickets, $10 in advance, $15 at the door. Adult tickets are $15 in advance, $20 at the door. You get a lot of food for that price. It's amazing. So for all those viewers out there, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. Mixed up my papers. And our next WEF meeting is going to be January 31st at 7:30 a.m. here. And the next Iron Chef Committee meeting is going to be January 31st at 9:30 after that meeting. That's my report.
Great, thank you. Technology, Mr. Schneider?
Nothing to report at this time. Our next meeting is February 3rd. We'll meet at 4:30.
Great, thank you. Student outreach. Tonight we have Talia Spillerman.
Hi, I'm Talia, and Carolyn's not here. She's at swimming. Wilson girls are doing really great in swimming. They just won Wilson Relays, and I think they're going to have a really great rest of the season. So a lot has happened at the high school recently, musically. The Wilson Theater Company just put on Dracula, which was amazing. It was really scary. I got a little scared. And it was awesome. Now they're working on Beauty and the Beast, which I think will be just as great. Also, 7 Wilson High School students were selected to perform at the District 10 Choir Festival, which was 3 days of rehearsal, and it ended in a performance this past Friday night. Out of those 7 students, 2 students, Ashley Filer and Andrew Santoro, were selected to perform at the Region 5 Chorus Festival. And also, this week is County Band, Orchestra, and Chorus, and Wilson will be hosting District Orchestra. Also, if you happen to go to the bathroom in the high school, there's now some bathroom literature on the doors. We made these papers called Stall Talk, and basically we have the different events happening in the school to get people more involved. So hopefully that brings out more school spirit. Also, this Thursday, Minithon is having a fundraiser where if you eat at Austin's or Brickstones and you show the Minithon flyer, 10% of the bill will be donated to Wilson Minithon. It's a great reason to go out to support Minithon. Also, Minithon is coming up, which is February 29th. Students stand for 12 hours with a bunch of fun activities to support those with pediatric cancer. Community hours is from 6 to 9, so it's a great reason to stop by the high school and see what goes on, and a lot of Wilson students are involved in this, including myself, and it's going to be a really fun and meaningful night. That's all.
Thank you. Public relations?
Great job, Talia. What an amazing list of accomplishments and activities going on at the high school. A few more things to add. Our band director, Mr. Cooper, recently was recognized the high school band director of the year for the Cavalcade of Bands, which is just a testament to the great work that Dave does on a daily basis with our kids. He's a great person and a great leader to have within our music department. So congratulations to Dave. Also recently, 15 Wilson High School students participated in the Berks County Science Olympiad competition at Kutztown University. The team is advised by Joe Melograno, who teaches physics, Greg Brooks, who also teaches physics for us down in the 9th grade, and actually a retired teacher, Mrs. Gay Wenzel, retired chemistry teacher in our high school. So hopefully we'll get her on this list tomorrow to come back and work with our kids here. The competition included 23 events that challenged students within the fields of physics, chem, bio, and engineering. Wilson's team finished collectively third out of all the schools at the competition. This is the highest achievement in the last few years. The team will continue to prepare for the regional competition that takes place in mid-March. And it will include approximately 30 teams from Berks County as well as surrounding counties. So good luck to those students who will be representing Wilson High School. And then also, lastly, right here in the Grandview Gallery, Cynthia Thomaset will be showcasing her work in the opening of the gallery from 2 to 5 on January 25th. We're thrilled to have Cynthia's incredibly vibrant and colorful mixed media works in our gallery.
Thank you, Mr. Trickett. Mr. Maravich?
Just briefly, because Mike had asked me to comment on it. The guidance that was released is really a reflection on guidance that was released about 16 years ago, so it's not new. The citations have been updated. It really refers to religious expression. The administration, sometimes the solicitor's office, and the students, we walk through that fine line as to what students can and cannot do, but this guidance does not change anything. There was an understanding that there's going to be some type of reporting requirement for school districts, probably through PD, to report information about any complaints. But again, this is not new guidance. It looks like pretty much a document that was released in 2003, and it's just kind of been rehashed with new citations for any cases that have been decided. So it doesn't appear to have any really, I mean, we can call it what we want. It's religious expression, not specifically prayer in school, which is, I know when the newspapers start reporting and the headlines start changing, the guidance doesn't really say what I think they're saying it's saying. So I don't see it as any upheaval in what the school districts have already been doing. On a separate note, he does have his JD, so you could probably call him Juris Doctorate. He has his JD, so you can call him doctor if you want.
Mr. Trickett? Oh, yes, thank you.
See, yeah. See, us lawyers could say we want to be called doctor. We have our Juris Doctorates.
All right, we'll make note of that.
Please don't do that.
We don't have any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But that, again, Mr. Martin did ask me to comment on that. I mean, we did have a non-denominational prayer comment that this board did do maybe 10 years ago. But based on a Third Circuit case, it was clear that that was not permissible anymore, and that law has not changed, and that case law has not changed. So I'm not saying that's what your only angle was on this issue, but.
Although I did see a religious speech case going to the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken.
There may be. I'm not sure.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, we do not have public participation on non-agenda items. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Oh, Mr. Martin, go ahead. Oh, other business, I'm sorry.
It's very important to have some important stuff here. For folks that follow civics, this Thursday is two important amendments that were approved. One was the poll tax from 1964 that was abolished. In 1933, I believe they changed the inauguration from March to January. So those are two big days. So I'll throw these little tidbits out now and then.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Any other business? Looking for a motion to adjourn? Sure.